I call the meeting to order. I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the February 3rd, 2026 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. We will start this evening with Councillor Bloom offering the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Kirakutsum Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor the first stewards of the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on. Tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of the Ashland watershed include the original past, present, and future Indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Takelma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Quakaka, where the crow lights, that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
Thank you. And Councillor Kaplan will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Bloom.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Duquesne.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Thank you. For Mayor's announcement, the first is that if you have come this evening to speak to the council, the way that you will sign up for that is by filling out the speaker form on the wall to the back there, filling it out and putting it in the tray by our city recorder's office or desk. A couple of things to keep in mind is when you're filling it out, if you have come to speak to us this evening on a topic that is an agenda item, please make sure you indicate that agenda item so that we can bring you up at the correct time. If you have come to speak with us this evening about an issue that is not on the agenda, please make sure that you indicate that you are here for public forum and you will be called forward at that time. We ask that you get your speaker request forms in at the beginning of the agenda item that you intend to speak at, and that allows us to manage the time better. We will now, I now have a couple of other announcements. The first is that the If I Were Mayor contest is in full swing, and the deadline is March 13th. So if you know a young person in our community, anywhere from elementary through high school, who is a civic-minded young person and would like to share their thoughts through this contest, it's really fun, and it's also a great way to help our young people understand civics and the importance of local government. So encourage all of the young people in your life to get their applications in, and we will move then our local winners up to the statewide contest. We also now have a proclamation in honor of Black History Month 2026. Whereas Black History Month, first proposed by scholar Carter G. Wilson in 1926, seeks to rightfully center the role of Black Americans in our national narrative. And whereas Black History Month pays tribute to the contributions that African Americans have made to American history in their struggles for freedom and equality, and deepens understanding of our shared history. And whereas the Association for the Study of African American Life and History has named the theme of Black History Month 2026, A Century of Black History Commemorations, recognizing that what began as a week-long observance of Black contributions to history and modern culture in 1926 has over time become the Black History Month we know today. And whereas this year's celebration honors the role of museums, archives, libraries, and parks in preserving Black history and culture, particularly as the nation observes the 250th anniversary of U.S. independence. And whereas Black history is American history and has an important role in modern public culture, workplaces, and education. And whereas inequality and injustice still linger in our cities, states, and country, it must be the aspiration and responsibility of all Americans to advance the ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We remain committed to honoring diversity, equity, inclusion, and mutual respect as the fundamental principles of city government and work to promote these core values throughout our community. During Black History Month, let us draw inspiration from this legacy as we continue together on the path toward equality, liberty, and opportunity for all. Our shared history shows us that we rise and fall together, an enduring lesson reflected in the words of Dr. Maya Angelou. The truth is, no one of us can be free until everybody is free. Now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, Oregon, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2026 as Black History Month and call upon the people of Ashland to observe this month with appropriate reflection and learning, and to continue our efforts to create a more just and equitable community and society. In Ashland, we are better together. We move on now to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Councilor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll pay attention to January 20th, page 3. There's a roll call vote on there. Hanson, Cheryl, Kaplan, yes. We needed, I believe we change Kaplan to Dale. Dale, Duquesne, Bloom for the no.
Page 3?
Yes. Bottom of page 3. We had Kaplan on there twice.
Can that be a scrivener's error?
And if there's nothing else, I'm happy to approve with changes.
So is it, do we need to bring those back?
I think we could do that as a scrivener's error,
Okay,
adjust it that way.
all right. So are there any other corrections? Thank you, Councilor Hanson.
Yeah.
If there are no further corrections, the floor is open for a motion to approve the minutes. Councilor Hanson?
I'd like to approve the minutes of January 14th and January 20th with the one change.
Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. There are no consent agenda items this evening, so we will move on to special presentations. Sabrina?
Thank you. Tonight we have the Interim Executive Director, Javier Duban, here to give us an overview of Oregon Shakespeare Festival and what they are up to. And so, Javier, if you want to come up here and sit with us, we have loaded your PowerPoint and you are good to go. The floor is yours. So Javi is going to run through this PowerPoint and then we'll have some time for question and answers at the end.
Very good. And if you can turn on your microphone by just yep, there you go, perfect. And bring it in nice and close to you when you start to speak.
I feel like I'm on Judge Judy. Well, first of all, Mayor Graham, Bob Kaplan, and Sabrina Cotta for the invite to speak with the council today. My name is Javier Duban, but you can call me Javi, and I'm currently serving as the Interim Executive Director of OSF. And before that, I was our Director of Marketing and Sales for the last few years. So I stepped into this role in late June after quite a bit of turnover at the festival. And unless you've been living under the rock, there's been a lot of turmoil for OSF over the last 5 years or so. And so when I started at the festival, I was curious about the specifics as to why, how we got here, what are the successes and the challenges, what have we learned from those challenges, and just give general financial updates. I come from a marketing communications background, and I felt often at the festival that one of our biggest problems was a communications issue. People just didn't know what was going on. And so I knew that was one of the first things that we needed to do. We needed to inform our community, both internally and externally, because they are very important to the success of OSF. And so I'm going to share some of that with you today. I have 15 minutes in this presentation, which I've been taking out into the community. Typically takes me 60 minutes. So I'm going to do a speed Cliff Notes version, which was me reading Shakespeare in high school. I never actually read it. I would do the Cliff Notes. So this feels very appropriate. So So I want to start by speaking about our challenges. Going to rip the Band-Aid off here, and I think they fall into three general buckets. First, leadership instability. We've had a ton of turnover at the festival, both in leadership roles and really across the entire organization. We have changing audience behavior. This is not just true for OSF, but any theater or arts organization across our country. And we were dealing with those challenges pre-pandemic. The pandemic just sort of exposed some inefficiencies and structural issues of the festival. And then, of course, rising cost. Producing theater is not cheap and never has it been, and that is true especially now given our economic climate. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to reference three of these challenges because I think they're sort of what created the perfect storm for the festival coming out of the pandemic. So we're going to go a little bit into leadership instability. So since 2019, OSF has had 6 different executive directors, so we changed them like underwear around here. 5 of the 6 came without prior OSF experience or institutional knowledge. And regardless of how talented a leader may be, it is pretty hard for anybody to kind of get their sea legs right when you have that amount of turnover in an organization of our size and scope. The chart you're seeing here shows you the tenure of all of artistic and executive directors through the course of our history. In blue, you'll see our artistic directors, and in red, you'll see our executive directors. In the darker colors, those represent the tenure of that AD or ED, and in the lighter colors, you'll see prior service to the festival before they were appointed to their roles. So you can see that we were a pretty lucky organization in the sense that we had leaders who were sitting in the roles for a very, very long time. It wasn't until the mid-2010s that we had some short stints, and also our first hires of people who hadn't had prior experience working with the festival. And so if you look closely here, it looks very different, doesn't it, than what it looks like up here. So what have we learned from that? Well, for one, succession planning is very important to our organization, given the uniqueness of our business model. We're unlike most American theaters, given our repertory and destination theater model. And that doesn't mean we're not looking for new perspectives, because I think they are equally critical to the sustainability of the festival. We don't want to just do the things that we've done in the past, because the world is changing, the economy is changing, and our community is changing, so we have to be able to respond to those changes. That also means, however, if the artistic or executive director cannot be hired from within, because that's not realistic in any given year, that other leaders in the organization need to have some institutional knowledge. So we have to find a way to blend both the new and all the things that make OSF special. And then transparency has been an issue over the course of the last few years, where as we've had turnover, there's been very little information about what's going on with the festival. And that's not just true externally, but also internally. People want to know what's going on, especially our donors. While they're giving donations, in a way, they're also shareholders to the organization. We're going to go a little bit into wow, that was loud, into historical financials. So the chart you're seeing here is showing you our revenue, expenses, and the resulting deficit or net excess between 2017 and 2024. So revenue, of course, represents all forms of revenue, both contributed and earned, which we'll go into here in a little bit, and expenses, everything that it takes to run the festival in any given year. And then the resulting revenue less expenses, which you see here reflected in our net deficit. So when people think of our financial challenges, they typically think of them as post-pandemic. But unfortunately, it's something that we've dealt with prior to the pandemic. So if we look at post-2020, so looking at 22, 23, and 24, you do see some pretty big deficits from 6.5 million to 2.3 million over the course of the last few years. Now, if you look beyond that, look earlier in 2017 and 2018, you see that we also had resulting deficits. Now, you might be thinking, well, $100,000 deficit is a hell of a lot better than a $6.5 million one. And to you, I say you're absolutely right. However, what you don't see in our public filings are things like one-time gifts that the festival cannot rely on every year, and also excess endowment contributions. The festival has an endowment that's separate from the organization. And we have a standard endowment draw every year that is supposed to sustain the festival over the course of its life. However, when we have a budget crisis, we often have to draw more from the endowment. And when that happens, we essentially diminish the returns that we'll have in the future. Think of it as drawing from your 401k early, right? the advice is never to do that. And so it's a similar story with us where, well, we only had a $100,000 deficit in 2018. What you don't see clearly is that we had a 3.5 excess endowment draw. So when you take that into account, it sort of hides the fact of our financial instability, which a $100,000 deficit is pretty common in the American theater, but also, given the smaller size of our endowment, which is about $30 million, that's not necessarily a healthy size given the size and scope of the organization if our operating budget is north of $45 million. This chart here is showing you the ratio between earned and contributed revenue. So we're a 501c3, so we do rely on donations from our audiences. Pre-pandemic, in 2015, you'll see that 65% of our revenue came from earned sources. So earned for us would primarily be ticket sales, but we also have other forms of earned revenue, like, for example, concessions, gift shop sales, rentals, anything that's not a donation, and then 35 came from contributed sources. You see this massive flip, right, starting in 2022, where we were all of a sudden relying on contributed revenue, which is very uncommon for the festival. In fact, if we look at the early 2000s, we would see that about 80% of our revenue had come from mostly ticket sales. And so all of a sudden we found ourselves having to build sort of a fundraising function over the last decade or so that was able to keep up with the rising cost of theater and the growing size of the organization. And ticket sales wasn't able to do that even back then, and it definitely rings true today. Now, to look at things in more detail, this chart here is showing you our contributed revenue going back to 2018. Now, at first glance, you'll see that we brought in just over $10 million in 2018 and have been hovering about $16 million in the last 2 seasons. However, what is not reflected here, again, is one-time gifts. Donors who may give us $2, $3, $4 million, who often experience donor fatigue, right? A donor doesn't want to be the one closing our budget gap every time, and so that's not necessarily a sustainable way to operate the festival. Now, on the ticket sales end, you'll see that the festival has brought in, used to bring in about $22 million in ticket sales year to year, and that plummeted to just $7 million in ticket sales coming out of the pandemic, and the same was true for 2023. That then got brought up to 10.4 in 2024, and then I have some more news to share later on in the presentation about where we landed in 2025. So you see that we lost one of the biggest sources of revenue, so it's no surprise that that resulted in many financial challenges for the organization. So you see some of these numbers and you think, well, clearly you don't have enough money, so what can you do to cut back and have a smaller budget? And that is a great question and something that I was tasked with when I stepped into the role. And we were always sort of flying by the seat of our pants, trying to figure out how to keep the place running, but nobody had really stopped and paused and thought, well, why exactly do we have to produce in this way? Like, what are the intricacies behind all of this? And so we dug into that as a team. So the answer to this question is yes, but it's complicated, like many things. For one, we're theater. Theater is already very difficult to produce, and not only that, we're a repertory theater, which is typically more expensive than just producing regular theater. Also, expenses support revenue at times. So for example, we can cut a show or 2 shows, but that will result in less ticket sales. We could do less performances, but then that also has impacts for the community as a whole and tourism. And so we have some challenges here when it comes to expense cutting. I don't know if you've heard of it, but inflation is something that's also impacted us quite a bit. So in the 2019 season, we had an operating, our expenses were $40.3 million. If we were to produce that season exactly as is today, it would cost us about $52 million, so $12 million more. Now, I know that inflation doesn't apply uniformly to every aspect of our business, but we cannot deny that inflation has had a big impact on our business model. One popular question that we get from our donors is that they come to our shows. This set is from The Importance of Being Earnest, which was one of our best sellers this past year. And they look at it and they think, wow, this looks so intricate, so extravagant. It's very sort of flashy, so to speak. Can you just produce cheaper? Can you just do a bare stage and let the performances speak for itself? And that's an interesting question, and I think a very normal one to have given the magic that you see on our stages. But digging into it further, what we spend on materials being everything that you see on stage that isn't people. So this can be costumes, props, sets, anything that isn't a person, actually only makes up about 1.4% of our total operating budget. So if we were to cut the materials, and let's just pretend that we were doing it on a bare stage, that wouldn't actually solve our budget deficit. It would just be a dent. Now, that doesn't mean we should be prudent in how we manage those expenses, but that isn't necessarily going to close the giant budget gap because, as you can imagine, and for a lot of businesses, most of our expenses are labor. In fact, nearly 2/3 of our total 2026 operating budget is just on labor. Think about how many people it takes to produce theater. It's a horrible business to be in. And if you want to start a theater company, just please don't. I've warned you. So really where we're going to save money is in wages and labor. However, the festival has done some of that work. In 2019, our headcount was about 650 people. It is now 495 people, and this includes all staff, artists, anything that it takes, any labor that it takes to run the festival. So we've decreased our labor by about a quarter compared to where we were in 2019. Now, another question that we get is, well, can you produce more solo shows, right? You can have one person instead of hiring a full cast. Again, that's a great question, but we can't necessarily produce a full slate of solo shows because solo shows tend to be harder sells for some audience members. In fact, people would be surprised to find out that nearly half of our audience to the festival in any given year is new. I know many people think of us as a organization that attracts a lot of audiences that have been coming to the festival for years, and that is very true, but a lot of them are, let's say, driving down the I-5 corridor and they might see the Brown Oregon Shakespeare Festival sign and might want to check it off their bucket list. So we have a lot of new people with differing tastes and people who are coming to the festival every year. So a new audience member might not really care about that certain actor, right, on stage. They just might want to be impressed by spectacle, meaning that they're more likely to attend a musical, which is more expensive for the festival to produce. Speaking of expensive, we also mount a lot of productions, and there's an important reason because of this. This chart is showing you how much of our revenue from ticket sales is coming from how many productions people attend. So you can see here that over 50% of our ticket revenue is coming from people who see 3 or more shows, and about over a quarter of our revenue is coming up from people who see 5 or more shows. So it's important for us to have a lot of variety to make sure that we attract repeat buyers, because while the new audience members make up half of our revenue, the ones who are returning tend to spend more. And this pie chart here actually underrepresents our impact because people who buy more tickets tend to be donors and members and are generally just more engaged with the festival. For time's sake, I'm going to skip this slide. So we know all these things, like what can we ultimately do? So in terms of producing more economically, we are curating productions of varying scale. So yes, you may see a solo show, but you're not going to see 4 of them like we've done in the past during budget crises. We're also looking at cast sizes. For example, can we do a show with 6 people instead of 12? We're also being very mindful in terms of hiring. Since we know that 70% of our expenses are from labor, we need to be extremely prudent in the roles that we ultimately decide to hire because it's very expensive to hire. And like any other business, there are additional efficiencies to be found at the organization that we're continually making to make sure that we're putting every dollar to good use. In terms of other learnings, we're programming with purpose. Of course, we always want to do this, but it's especially critical right now. Now, there are some challenges doing this. Artistically, it can be very difficult to find a musical that has X amount of people, that has no dancing, that is cheap to produce, right? That already kind of makes the list smaller of shows that we have the option to produce. Planning ahead has been a big one over the last 6 months. We've accelerated many of our timelines, including budgeting, so it makes us more nimble if something needs to change in our budget. We're also spending smarter, not just less. It can be easy to cut, but there are places that we want to invest in. For example, it's probably not a good idea to cut much of the marketing budget, given then that's how we're attracting audiences. We're also having to modernize our marketing. As somebody who started in marketing and as the head of marketing at the late 2022, I was surprised by just how the lack of systems and modernization in our processes. And so a lot of our work has been focused on that. And also, I think it's very important and a responsibility of the festival to really lean into our community in terms of featuring everything that there is to do here in the Rogue Valley. it is harder than ever to get people off their couches. So it is actually in our advantage that we highlight everything that this valley has to offer because it increases the value proposition. It's, they might not come just for the show, but if they want to go hiking or kayaking, if we increase the value proposition, we have a higher likelihood of attracting a different kind of audience, including younger audiences. We're also optimizing things like earned income. We've instituted several pricing changes and restructuring that just make more sense for the organization. But most of all, principal giving, which we define as gifts of $1 million or more, have been critical to maintaining our infrastructure. So even though ticket sales have increased in great amounts, we still need time. Success does not happen overnight, especially for an organization of our size and scope. But getting a principal gift is easier said than done. If you worked in nonprofit fundraising, you know that it takes years sometimes to develop a relationship with a donor that's going to be fruitful. And what the festival hasn't necessarily cracked the code on is making a clear case for support. People don't want to support losers. They don't want to support organizations that are failing. They want to support successful organizations. And so we have to be a successful organization in order to garner support from donors who can give multi-million-dollar gifts. And of course, this won't be sustainable forever because the whole purpose of getting these large gifts in advance is to build the runway, sort of the bridge to get from point A to point B. Right now, the thing that we need more than money is time, right? Time gives us the chance to build more capacity at the organization. All right, so I know that I'm over time, but I just want to share some quick wins. For one, I'm excited to share that this past year, we brought in nearly $15 million in ticket sales. That is a whopping 42% increase compared to the 2024 season and over double of the 22 and 23 seasons. So it's a very exciting and a huge win, not just for the organization, but anybody who relies on the visitors that the festival brings. Also, we've seen increases across all geographic markets, especially over in California, where we're seeing a 31% increase in attendance compared to the 2024 season. Additionally, we also received a $5.1 million gift from one of our most loyal donors and former board members, Bertie Elliott, for her belief of where the organization is heading. We saved $1.9 million in expenses through different cost cutting and savings measures. So that means one less principal gift or ticket sale to rely on. And that brings our 26 budget, now that 25 season has closed, to $43.4 million, the ticket sales goal of $16.3 million, and a contributed revenue goal of $22.5 million. And we're 58% to our contributed revenue goal, which is the highest we've been in quite some time. Now, while I want everybody to celebrate the success, I also want to make it clear that the battle is not over. There's a lot of work that the festival has to do to get on stable ground, especially given we weren't necessarily on the most stable ground even pre-pandemic. So while I want to be excited about the wins, it means that there is very small margin for error in the work that we're doing. And so we have to keep our heads down and continue pushing forward. And this success will not just be achieved by OSF, but the entire Ashland community and those that support us. So that means that our immediate organizational priorities, which is a lot of words, and I'm going to go very quickly, is mission fulfillment. If people don't like our shows, then what are we doing here, right? People need to like the shows in order to come to them. We are a very old organization, and I found so many things that are just straight out of 30 years ago that just need to be updated. There's a lot of modernization that has to happen at the festival. As you, of course, know now, audience growth is very important. Is perhaps our largest risk currently to the organization not having our houses full, right? So we're operating at about 60% capacity, but ideally we should be operating anywhere between 80 to 90% capacity. And of course, I'm not even mentioning all the effects of climate change, which also affect our attendance numbers. As I said, principal gift cultivation is extremely important. We need to rebuild our membership base. Pre-pandemic, the festival boasted nearly 16,000 members and now just has less than 7,000. And so we know they're important to sustaining the festival. And of course, even if I received $30 million right now from any of you, we would still need to expense manage, right? We can't just get too comfortable. We need to sort of save our acorns, so to speak, because we never know when something unexpected might happen, because it's unrealistic to expect the festival to be operating in a surplus in any given year. It is nonprofit theater after all, so we're always going to have some form of challenges. And finally, while I'm talking a lot about what's happened in the past, I would be remiss to say that it is important that the festival also think about the future, how we're going to bridge the past with the future to make sure that we honor all the things that make OSF special, but also think about all the changing things that are happening in the world and how we can meet those needs and build a more resilient organization. And even our founder, Angus Bomer, wrote on this topic over 50 years ago. And when I found this quote, it resonated because it speaks to our current moment perfectly. He says, "We are not a museum, not an antiquarian display place. The past is certainly our nurturing source and continuing inspiration, but we are in no way bound by the past. We don't stand still. We are living, breathing, changing, and growing theater with a future still to discover. Theater is always a living art with open arms for the new. The legacy of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival will continue to enrich the future because our beginnings are strong, sound, and sure." Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Javi. So just reminding the audience that there is no clapping or noise making, but we do allow for this. So if you the international symbol, you're getting a very strong positive response there, Javi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out and speaking with us. Are there questions? Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Javi, and thanks for shrinking this to a fraction of your normal presentation. I'm struck by one of the things that you said, which is the engagement of OSF with the community and parting the community. Two things. One, you talked about OSF kind of marketing the community as well, and I know that OSF has a big marketing mouth. Bigger than maybe anybody else. So if you could talk a little bit about how you're using that. And then the other thing is that I know you have used OSF Spaces, have allowed other community organizations to use OSF Spaces in the past, and I'm wondering what you're thinking about that for the future.
Yes, so for the first question, it started as a simple, it's funny, we ran this campaign last year where we did a video. It was just on a phone. It wasn't a fancy video, and it featured a restaurant. I believe it featured Lithia Park, other things to do. And the video maybe has 5 seconds of OSF, and it was our highest performing video. It brought in the most revenue, the most clicks, and most traffic to our website than any ad. That's more than the art itself at times. And what that's shown us is that when we are marketing, that we're sort of marketing the experience. It's not, so we'll send something like an email highlighting, helping people plan their trip, because we were very lucky that we could rely on these 16,000 members in the past, and they know exactly what to do, but a new audience member actually doesn't know what to do, right? So we've taken the opportunity to highlight other things in the community and working with different community partners to highlight those things. And this year as well, we're increasing our tourism efforts and are also beginning campaigns in markets like San Francisco and Portland, which we've been in before, but our marketing budget started as a tiny $250,000 and has grown to about $1.2 million. So we have a lot more firepower behind the reach that we can do. And you're absolutely right that OSF has a bigger reach, sometimes than the city itself. And so we feel that as an opportunity to kind of also be an extension of Travel Ashland and the Chamber of Commerce, given that the reach that we have. We don't have a lot of resources, in case you didn't notice, but we do have more, right, than some other organizations. So we've been trying to lean in more to that over the course of the last couple of years, and we'll keep doing that, especially this year. To your other question, yes, we've increased efforts to try to utilize our spaces for more community organizations. I think the learning curve for us is that we haven't done a ton of things like that. So operationally, it can be very difficult. And so we've explored a couple of different partnerships, and we hope to expand that in the future. The big challenge that we're having now is the cost of renting our space is very high in order for the organization to break even. So when we have a rental in one of our spaces, particularly our theaters, the return on investment for OSF is actually quite low. And we have to make sure that not only are we covering the cost of renting the space, but we also have the overhead, like staff, right, who we are not necessarily calculating the return on investment. And so we're continuing to explore like what best pricing models exist out there to make sure that it is accessible, but it also makes the festival revenue, because at the end of the day, we know that there's still opportunities to utilize our spaces in different ways. And so we're looking at that also for our 27th season to see how we can activate our spaces, even when performances are happening, and just to diversify our offerings, because we know that we might not be able to get a new audience through one of our shows, but maybe if they experience a concert, which might be a little bit more mainstream, that might actually also help us capture those folks.
Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Javi. We really appreciate you coming here, and these numbers are very promising, and really appreciate all the work that you and the staff has gone into, and the community. I mean, the theater community is stepping up and showing us that they're here and they want to come back. Just to tag on to Councillor Kaplan's, you had three kind of test pieces I was hoping you were going to touch on in that last question. Could you tell us, is it too early to say how the Sarcasm Festival went, which was the Epic Ashland events that were held in OSF spaces?
Yeah, so I don't want to, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think over the course of the I believe it was 3 nights of performances or so, each of them held about 400 to 500 people, and the capacity for the venue is about 600. So they were relatively full.
That's great.
Yes, and it was an interesting experiment for us because we've never really done anything like that in the Bomer, and so we're still learning, like, how can we do these events in a way that's super efficient. I know Epic Ashland learned a lot from it as well, because it was their first time working with us in that context with the space. But we do plan to collaborate next year for the event. It's just a matter of figuring out, what are all the learnings and how can we best tweak the process to do it again.
Well, thank you. One more, if I may. You also mentioned climate change impacting your business. And of course, we've had summer smoke, which is like, you can't mitigate that really in your open air theater. But I'm just curious if you have designs on mitigating climate change and what that might look like for the next couple of years.
Yes, it's such a tough question. I know that at some point we did a feasibility study to build a roof over the Elizabethan, but the price tag, I believe, is like $125 million. So if you have that, I would, let's talk after the meeting. But aside from building a roof on the Elizabethan or retractable roof, we've actually had, so August is our low attendance month this day and age. However, in 24, we had an 80% increase in August attendance, and then I believe we had a 40% increase over that in 25. And I think the big reason for this is that there are just more offerings. When a show gets canceled and you only have 3 shows running, which was true for us in 23, there's not very many places for people to go. So if we have different options in our indoor spaces, we can sort of funnel the traffic there. That doesn't necessarily absorb all of our losses of those audiences, but it's a hell of a lot better than just canceling the performance and not being able to place people there. So our variety is our superpower when it comes to climate, because there are other options at the festival that are indoors.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Javi, thank you so much for coming down. Really appreciate it. And it's, as the other councilors have said, this is exciting. It's the trajectory. I mean, it's hope. It's you're telling a great story, and it's just phenomenal to see this trending. Just wanted, as an aside, to just say, really appreciate the call out of transparency. That's so important for the community to know what's going on. As we do our work, we talk a lot about community or organizational partnerships and collaborations, and we all want to do that. That's wonderful. But then sometimes operationally, we'll talk every quarter or so, but we'll put our heads down and we'll be doing our work, and you'll be doing your work, and we're going a million miles an hour. But while we've got you here, what, in your opinion and in your vision, is a successful and productive partnership with the City of Ashland as an organization? How can we help you? How can you help us? What does that look like to you?
Wow, that's a great question. How long do you have? I'm kidding. Wow, I haven't really thought about this a lot because my head has kind of been buried in these spreadsheets and these numbers and how to get us back to sustainability. I think one step forward that I think has actually helped, and I think we're continuing to look more of this, is just constant communication. I've been working very closely with Sabrina. I think in the past it was just a little bit radio silent between both groups, and as you said, people were sort of doing their own thing. And so it's very important for me to know what's impacting the city as ahead of time as possible, because oftentimes those things impact the festival in some way, given the numbers that we're pulling in, as you can see here. The other thing is just more support for tourism dollars would always be great. I know that we're a pretty large organization compared to most other entities in Oregon, but every dollar counts for us. So any allocations, the allocations that we get from the lodging tax are very important to us. And while they might not seem great in the grand scheme of things, that's like 2 people's salaries or a whole program that we're counting on. So the lodging tax is very important to the festival. Also, any visibility efforts, which I know we've talked about, to make sure that people know about Ashland. I think one comment that I get very frequently is that just people don't know that we are here unless they happen to see that sign that says Oregon Shakespeare Festival as they're driving down. And so any visibility efforts, I think, would be extremely important to us and would help not just amplify OSF, but all of Ashland. So those are some things off the top of my head that I can think of.
Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Javi. This isn't a question, it's a comment, so it's easy. I just wanted to tell you, thank you so much for the video and for showing this to us. And most importantly, I really appreciated the wins, because it's so important that we see our wins and we can measure our efforts and we can say we're doing good. And I know you have to keep your eye on the ball and you can't really look away. But still, to take a break and pat yourself on the back and say, good job. And I believe that looking at our wins give us momentum to keep it up. And so I look forward to seeing what you're going to do, what Ashland is going to do. I look forward to moving forward. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the wins.
Thank you. And we just sent out a sort of annual report this year. We hadn't sent one in 5 years, and the response to it has been incredible. There's a lot of power in sharing that because, as I said, our donors want to support winners, right? And so it helps us get the word out. And so it's absolutely true. You're right.
Exactly. And if I can really quick, Mayor, is that in partnership, I remember when it was the pandemic, OSF reached out to Southern Oregon Pride, and we got together and did our little Pride thing virtually, and it was very successful. So I always appreciate the partnership. So look forward to next year. Thanks, Howard.
Thank you.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, hey, just a comment also. I just want to express my appreciation for you and for the festival and for showing us all of this. I think it's important to understand that there's a lot of challenges, right, for all organizations, for all of these entities within the city, and there's been negative news, and I think that OSF is a real bright spot in our community right now. So thank you for being that for all of us.
Thank you.
Javi, it's so good to see you. One of the things that strikes me is just the transformation that we've seen in not only in OSF, but in OSF's relationship with the city and the larger community over the last couple of years. And it has been great to be part of that and to see that not only willingness, but the real drive to reconnect. One of the things that struck me during the pandemic was that we saw that people still kept coming to Ashland. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the theater open, but they still kept coming. And I think what it taught us when the theater came back is that the draw to Ashland, as you have discussed, is the whole thing. There is something that people feel when they get to this sweet little town of ours, and the Shakespeare Festival is a huge part of that. And so too are all of the other pieces, the places where people can stay, the other things they can do, the connection to nature. All of that makes for a very unique kind of travel experience, and I think that we've gotten now to a place where that is being recognized across the board with the people who are involved in our visitor economy here. So it has been fantastic to have that relationship building. One of the things that we've done as a council is to identify liaisons to community anchors like OSF. And I think that that is something that this council can be proud of too, because we're starting to see the fruits of that, of making a conscious effort to connect with our community partners. A couple of things that we are working on for the community to know is those visibility efforts. So how do we help people understand that they're coming into Ashland, the home of OSF, and what does that look like for us to mark the beginnings and the endings of the seasons? We used to have, before the pandemic, we had other traditions that would remind the community and would draw the community out in celebration of the festival. And so we're thinking with the OSF leadership, and glad to have you in those conversations, about what does that look like? How can the city and the larger community really come in alongside OSF and support you in your good work? So thank you very much for coming tonight and sharing this information with us. And again, you know, following on behind Councilor Dale's comments, I think us all really understanding not only what has happened, but the trajectory you're on and the good work you've all done to shift the future for OSF is really important for us all to know. So thank you so much again for coming out tonight, and we are here to help in any way we can.
Thank you.
Take care. We move on now to the public forum. Alyssa, do we have signups? So the way public forum works is that if you have signed up, you will come up to the podium that it is about to have a microphone. It's 11. Okay, great. And what you will do is you'll see up on this clock, there will be a 3-minute time zone or a several-minute time zone. Tonight we have 11 people signed up, so we aren't going to be able to give everyone a full 3 minutes, but we will, I'll let you know what that timing is when you get there. You'll see the timing up on the side clock, and you'll also see it on a visible display next to the microphone. When you have 20 seconds left, you will hear the first buzzer, and the light will go from green to yellow. When your time is up, the light will move from yellow to red, and you'll hear a second buzzer. So when you hear the first buzzer, you're not done yet. You still have 20 seconds, but that's the signal to start to wrap it up. We ask that when the second buzzer is sounded, that you finish the sentence that you're on, so that we can hear from the other people who have come to speak with us this evening. I also just want to make sure that everyone understands that per council rules, we do not engage in a back and forth conversation. So if you've come to speak with us tonight, we are listening to what you are saying, but any follow-on from the council will come after the meeting. Please feel free to also reach out beyond, after you've spoken with us tonight, send us email messages. That is how you'll get more of a conversation back and forth. So we have 11 people who have signed up this evening. Our public forum is generally set to be 15 minutes. So I would like to give each person 1.5 minutes. That'll still push us over the 15-minute boundary, but that hopefully will give everyone enough time to at least get the gist of what you've come to speak with us about out tonight. So I will name off the first 4 people who will speak. Feel free to form a line up against the wall. If you need the microphone to be brought to you for mobility reasons, please just raise your hand when I call your name, and we'll bring the microphone to you. The first speaker is Denise M. Gerke, followed by Linda Adams, Paul Mozina, and Sharon Bryson. So we'll start with Denise M. Gerke. And please tell us your name and the city in which you reside as you start your testimony.
Hi, my name is Denise Gerke, and I'm talking on the business issue of homelessness in Ashland and throughout the nation. I'm here to address critical issues affecting our homeless community, not just in Ashland, but nationwide. Based on my extensive research into both homelessness and my invention, Apogothere Venturi technology, I've identified systemic problems that demand our attention. At the last meeting, I shared my experience with Asante during my son's birth and discussed my personal trafficking ordeal. My research indicates this underground criminal organization has operated for far too long, creating conditions that are fundamentally unsustainable for humanity. I'm confident that Apocothere Venturi technology offers a pathway forward, one that can eliminate the need for these harmful practices that have traumatized countless victims and destroyed our lives, some of which live right here on the Night Lawn. We're at a breaking point. Asante requires immediate investigation and complete restructuring, but I'm also here to offer hope. With diligence and innovation, we can eliminate homelessness entirely, allowing humanity to focus on progress and building a profitable, sustainable future for America first, and as an example for the world. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Linda Adams, I live down Oak Street. As we, the people, with you as our representatives, engage in the strategic planning process ahead, I want to speak to the soul of our city. We are at a crossroads, and the map we choose now will define our character for a generation. Our Constitution was established to promote the general welfare. This is a moral mandate, not just a legal one. In times of physical uncertainty, the easiest path is austerity, the narrowing of our vision until we only see line items, deficits, and Cheeto heads. But we must not allow budget challenges to become an excuse for a poverty of imagination. Government, at its best, is the vehicle through which we manifest our shared values. It is the physical embodiment of the common good. We must recognize that human capital and infrastructure are two sides of the same coin. This includes the boring miracles of local government, restructuring charters, the ability to turn on a tap and have clean water flow, or to flip a switch and see light. But a truly healthy infrastructure must also include a safety net for our most vulnerable. I urge you to reject the fearful narrative of scarcity. Let us embrace a strategic plan that invests boldly in our infrastructure and all our people. Let's ensure Ashland remains a place where the light stays on, the water flows, and no one is left behind in the dark.
Thank you. We have Paul Mozina, followed by Sharon Bryson, and then Suzanne Haveman and John Maurer.
Hi, my name is Paul Mozina. I've been speaking to you about the budget process, the 2025, 2027 budget process, since about the middle of June. And I attempted to file a complaint with the chief of police, who is by the charter, is supposed to enforce the charter. I attempted to file a complaint with him, and when I sent him a summary, he said, "Oh, the city attorney he's the parliamentarian. He's already responded to you." And so what the chief did was he gave the judgment of whether the city attorney had followed parliamentary rules at the study session and the council meeting when you voted on the budget. He delegated the decision making to the city attorney, and the city attorney is the one who was at the table and failed to make the correct calls. The city council violated the Oregon revised statutes regarding the budget hearing. You violated the open meetings laws and the ordinances regarding the study session, where you amended the budget, and you failed to take a vote on the budget, which violated the charter in two ways. So the charter is essentially unenforceable when people that serve at the pleasure of the council, including the chief of police and the city attorney, fail to engage with the public when they present legitimate complaints about your process that you undertook. I got no feedback since June, since the July 2nd email. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sharon Bryson. I live in Ashland. I'm here to discuss AMC 9.28, the Ashland pesticide law. Communities that are invested in informing residents of the poisoning that government inflicts on their citizens are able to go to their city website and have an IPM, integrated pest management policy, at the strike of a keyboard. It took me about 3 minutes to find an IPM for Ashland School District, City of Talent, City of Medford, City of Eugene, City of Portland. All were posted for free. No IPM for Ashland. I've been told that the city of Ashland doesn't have IPM. Instead, it's Ashland AMC 9.28. In the text of AMC 9.28, there are gaps that cause the law to be ineffective. And yes, The policy states that the Parks Department has a similar policy in place. That is not posted for public view. I was able to get a copy from an insider. Parks' similar policy that is stated in the AMC, Parks has an IPM, and it clearly states the steps of the policy and how the records will be kept. Gaps in 9.28 begin with the purpose statement, designed to reduce, eliminate, or of the exposure of pesticides, but there's no plan. The landscapes it talks about, it's just a flipping mess. Anyway, I am going to be posting the, I have
Thank you, ma'am.
I have 16.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. If you can give that to our recorder. We have Suzanne Haveman, John Maurer, followed by Mary Hughes, and Clarinda Maripin.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Havman. I have lived here since 1974. I first worked at Ashland Community Hospital in 1974. I'm a registered nurse. I've worked there 33 years, and I was the manager of surgery for 22 years. I am here to ask that you do not let Asante destroy, annihilate, kill Ashland Community Hospital. It is an essential part of our Ashland community. It is an excellent health care organization that has been here over 100 years. We here in Ashland take care of our own. We do an excellent job with OSF, with SOU, YMCA, with the hospital. People are drawn here to this healthy community. That hospital gives health and well-being to our community and others. Asante has a role, but it is not to destroy Ashland Community Hospital. They need us. We are the golden goose. I've been here long enough to see that their management administration is horrible. They've made horrible decisions. They see nothing but real estate up there, and please do not let Ashland Community Hospital be destroyed. It is part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Maurer, physician and surgeon here, 50 years in Ashland. And this is the second time in a row that I've presented to you. I can't believe that. So it must be important. I'll let you know that it is. Councilor McQueen, we need a win for healthcare. Honestly, we do. And that's a much bigger thing than just the hospital surviving or not surviving. It's a much bigger question, and I think the time has come. And I think you all are going to have a role in changing this broken system that this country has. That sounds grandiose, I know. But at this time, you have it within your purview to make it happen. Just like Have said, Asante has gone through a change of leadership that rivals exactly what OSF went through. Its credibility is in the toilet. It's trust, and you know, the transparency that lacked this whole decision. We had nothing to say or any knowledge of what was going to happen to this hospital. We knew it was coming, but we didn't. But I say that, I can tell you I'm very concerned about the 9 very brave young women that are neonatologists that aren't going to be working for Asante. You need to follow that closely. They stood up for the most vulnerable, those 1-pounders that they taken care of. They wouldn't move from their belief, and they're going to be gone because of it. Stay tuned. Johan, you've got a big job coming up. Tanya, Mayor, excuse me, thank you for being so affirmative in your position that we're going to recover that $4 million. And we'll put it to good use down the road when that's happening.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Mary Hughes. I spoke a couple of weeks ago. I want to start with something that I just read in an opinion piece this morning. by John Kitzhaber. He was a physician in healthcare, a policy consultant and governor of Oregon for a while. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him, but this is a quote from him, so I'm stealing a passage, well, he stole it first, from Ernest Hemingway's novel, The Sun Also Rises, in which Bill Gordon asks Mike Campbell, "How did you go bankrupt?" Mike replies, 2 ways, gradually, then suddenly. How did we lose control of Ashland Community Hospital? Gradually, and now suddenly. And that is why I'm here today to speak. I came here over 50 years ago. I read about Ashland, and I was living in Arizona, and I read about what a great community it was. I got here, and I just absolutely, I felt it. And then I've worked in hospitals across the country before and since then. I've been in large institutions, very rural institutions, and they're all suffering. It's true. But I do think that what Ashland has is this sense of community, and that is what we should be able to pull us through. So, gosh, what do I say? Courage. I think we need to we shouldn't be afraid to fail. If we need to just go out there, courage. You know what? I have something in my pocket that a friend of mine gave me yesterday. She was in Mother Courage and was given this prop, and I've got to go.
Thank you. We have Clarinda Maripin, followed by Kate Hartzell, Wes Brain, and Debbie Matson.
Hi, my name is Clarinda Maripin, and I'm an Ashlander. Amongst Ashlanders with jobs and houses, the number one question that I come across is, how is Ashland going to pay for itself with the upcoming deficit? But yet yesterday in the study session, y'all spent over an hour and 11 minutes out of an hour and 15-minute session talking about how long a person has to be a resident to run for office, I guess. This is akin to President Trump bringing up fictitious voter fraud so no one looks at the Epstein files. Yes, I went there. According to your own forecasts put out at the November retreat you hosted, we have a fiscal deficit coming up sometime at worst next year and at best 3 years from now. And I don't even trust those numbers given the premises you put out. Every agenda item you bring up should address this issue. Every staff proposal needs to be given a skeptic's eye when it comes to spending money, and every counselor should preface their comments with, "And how will this affect the looming deficit?" Let me help you practice. You want a new city hall complex in this economy? If you get a bond for it, how's that going to affect the looming deficit? I also might want to know if there's any litigation related to the current city hall and how that will affect the looming deficit. Speaking of bonds, we already have a huge water treatment plant bond. How is that debt service going to look like in the next year, and how is it going to affect the looming deficit? Instead, you spend an hour and 11 minutes on a phantom problem. Do better.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Hartzell. I learned this week that the city is acting to violate at least the spirit, if not the contract that it made 100 years ago with a generous local family that granted use of the property for city's use downtown for City Hall. After enjoying what I've understood always to be a free use of that building by the city all this time, the city seems to be asserting some kind of legal squatter's rights all of a sudden, and it represents for me an embarrassing absence of integrity. I hope I'm misunderstanding the facts. It's been reported that the city, a local firm contracting with the city, suggested this be done. I'm disappointed at the use of taxpayer money to run a full-page ad in the sneak preview so that the city manager could explain this week why the city is beginning to sort of encroach into the staffing duties of the Parks and Recs Commission. But I would like to see the mayor and the city council to find a lower-cost way to communicate with the citizens why it's proposing to sell a building that we've been able to use all these years free of charge and are now going to court to try to take it away from the heirs of the family that gave it to the city. If I'm understanding things, that's great. Explain it to me, please. Explain it to your citizens.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Wes Brain. I live on Garfield Street, not far away. been a participant with city council. I used to know everybody personally on city council, and I only know a couple of you now. I want to know every one of you, I really do. I'm here to talk about, I was here at the last meeting, 1 minute only had, now I got a minute and a half, I got to be quick, to talk about our Ashland Community Hospital. You might have noticed several of us have brought that up. If there's an agenda item, maybe for the next council meeting, let's put it back on the agenda. Let's slow down. Let's really dig in to giving up our hospital. I'm here to speak for what our hospital has been, what it is now, and what it's going to be down the future. Yeah, we sold the property. The hospital is not gone. So, counselors here, I remember, when was this? Whatever happened with, you don't get paid a lot, but you guys got health care was offered as something. I don't know whatever came of that, but I do know the cost of health care. And I do know why that was an important issue for all you counselors and for all of us in this room right now. Healthcare needs to be back on the agenda. I would like to have a position like Shakespeare did this evening and make a presentation. This is my ask for a future council meeting for healthcare for all of us. I have more to say, but you know, a minute and a half is short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Debbie Matson. I live in Ashland, directly across the street from the Senior Center on Holmes Avenue. There are a large number of us people in Ashland of retirement age. We need this hospital. Many live in our own homes, and many live in Ashland senior communities and assisted living facilities. Directly across Maple Street from the hospital is Linda Vista Care Center, which does have a resident community. Just down Maple is the Maple Ridge, just down Maple Street is the Maple Ridge community, which offers assisted living. Other facilities within a few minutes drive of our hospital are Village at Valley View for memory care, Mountain Meadows, and Skylark Community Care. These communities need a nearby hospital. It is interesting to note that the Medford senior living communities are all clustered around the Medford hospitals. Personal experience, a friend in her 80s was recovering from surgery at Linda Vista when she became gravely ill. She had a 102-degree fever and was seriously dehydrated. She was taken by ambulance to Ashland Emergency Room, where she was treated and subsequently admitted. She would not have survived a transfer to an Asante hospital in Medford. Anecdote: this morning I had to go to the hospital for lab work. Both lots on Maple Street were completely full. There was no parking. I thought, this is hardly the sign of an underused facility, as I smiled and found a spot on the curb. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now to public hearing. We will start with public hearing and first reading, the ordinance language change set number 2. Sabrina?
Thank you. So continuing in the spirit of cleaning up around our code, the city attorney has 13 ordinances to roll through tonight for first reading. So I'm going to go ahead and hand that over to him.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and Carmel for being here. So for all of you, this will be the second time seeing these proposed changes. This came up in our study session. It was part, at that point, of what was called Table 3, more substantive changes or things that were more than just like Scrivener's error and that sort of thing. For the small group meeting that we had maybe a month or so ago, this is your third time seeing it now. But so the rest of council knows this came before that small group, and we kind of went through the reasons for the changes. A bit more substantive here, but they're all in your packet with all the changes. And do you want to take turns? What do you want to do? You want to lead the show?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one way we could do it is we'll just go, or one way I was thinking we could do it is just to go through, in your packet, there is a spreadsheet. And so I think it'd just be kind of a fast way where you have the information in front of you and we can go through that spreadsheet and then go from there.
So the only thing is we'll want to mention which ordinance it is with the spreadsheet, because that just has it by
Yeah.
code number. So we could start with the ordinance number and then refer to the spreadsheet as to which portions of the code it is.
Right. And then, do you want to do the, I guess, Mayor Johan question, city attorney question? Do you want to kind of get consensus and then do motions at the end, very end, or?
We got to do each of the public readings
Oh,
as
'cause
their
we need
own
the public
motion, because
hearing,
each
right.
one has their own public forum.
Okay.
Or public comment, sorry.
Okay. So, ordinance, the ordinance 3271, this is an ordinance establishing an office of the city recorder and the creation of AMC 2.28.530. This is updating the section of our code that outlines all of the different departments in a city. And this is a code update after the city recorder was taken out as an elected official in the charter. And it kind of broadly speaks to city recorder's duties. Are there any questions of staff? Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this issue?
I believe that's the one, Claudia.
That's the one that's the latest. So okay, so in this public hearing, we've had one community member sign up to speak to us, Clarinda Maripen. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, this will be, I reviewed it. I had a number of different things to say. I was hoping I could speak on all of them at once. So this is about the recorder, and this is actually the one that I have the most problem with. I think as council members, you should too. Putting the recorder under the administration is a terrible idea. Recorder oversees our elections. She should be overseen by the council and mayor, not by administration. Putting it under a city manager blinds us as the public to what she's doing, and honestly, it gives incumbent candidates access in a way challengers do not. It will be messy and hard to manage, I understand, putting it under council, but a whole lot less problematic than consolidating power in an opaque bureaucracy. An example of how the council could oversee her is it could look like a broad monthly report to the council for review, but the important part of it is it would be now part of public record, not something hidden away behind doors. Another guardrail you might want to impose, but I think it would be harder to put together, would be to have a public election commission to oversee her work, but I think that'll be far more challenging. However, under consolidating power under the city manager gives us zero transparency, and that should not be tolerated.
Thank you. Are there any other people who have signed up to speak on this issue?
No.
There's one right there. A new one has come in. Kate Hartzell, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I don't think I'll need 3 minutes. I did look this over at home earlier, and I wasn't paying a lot of attention when we moved the recorder's office from elected to appointed, and I opposed it. I think it was a bad vote. I was on city council from 2000 to 2008, and I had communications with the recorders during that time. I did, and I want to share with you that pressure that was talked about by the last speaker, it's real. And I think the parallel being over to the national and the state system of government, that it is important to have someone who is the direct liaison to the public. That's where information requests go, that's where election and initiative petitions go, and the idea of having one person overseeing that office, it's created problems in the past when the person was elected. So given that now they're going to be appointed and more at risk of having a bad performance review by the city manager, it takes something from the voters. And I would encourage you to think about, you can separate that off from tonight's action and give it some more thought, look at some of the other models, and see if there isn't a better way to do it. I would ask you to do that, please.
Thank you. Are there any other signups to speak, Alyssa?
Not on that particular one.
I close the public hearing. Any final questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve first reading of Ordinance 3271, an ordinance establishing an office of the city recorder in the creation of AMC and the creation, Johan, just want to make sure, should that be in or and? In the creation of AMC. Okay, that's correct. All right, if I may, Mayor, can I start that over for a clean
Yes.
read? Yes. I move to approve first reading of Ordinance 3271, an ordinance establishing an office of the city recorder in the creation of AMC 2.28.530 and schedule second reading during the April 21st, 2026 council meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councillor Dale?
Yeah, actually, I would like to speak to this just very briefly, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate the comments from the two speakers tonight, and it is absolutely noted and well taken. 2 points I'd make is that it was, put to the people of the citizens of Ashland who voted to make this change. I would say, just from my experience being on council, that the potential for and the severity of that being an elected position in today's world, at the cost that the potential cause to harm of the citizens without the oversight that you would have every 4 years by a citizenry that may not know exactly what's going on. I think this actually does provide much more oversight being in a appointed position, and that's why I support and made this motion.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to briefly speak on that too, because when I started council 3 years ago, it was an elected position, and we had a fine person in that seat. And also, it was when that person left, it was an opportunity to make a change without having the ability to hire based on somebody's ability and their past experiences, and really to be able to manage that person, not as an elected, but as an employee, I think has really improved the position. We're really lucky to have a very awesome person in that seat right now. Alyssa's crushing it. And should Alyssa leave, we want to be able to hire somebody with the skills as opposed to somebody who's very crafty at getting elected. And I'm not saying that we've had that in the past, but I'm just I'm grateful for the structure that it is now. It's been thought through, and that's why I support it.
Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted just to chime in because when this came up in front of the people to vote on, I didn't necessarily vote on this being appointed position, but it is, and I support the people's decision. And at the end of the day, we all answer to the citizens of Ashland. So I feel very comfortable in supporting this. So.
Sabrina?
So I know we have April 21st on the council communication for the next reading. I would like to propose that we move it up to February 17th, unless council has an issue with that. We have time at the next meeting. We had it scheduled already, so I think we just had a miscommunication between our offices. So I would just wonder if we could propose an amendment. Councillor Dale?
Would it be, okay, an amendment, yeah. Yeah, I would offer amendment to schedule the second reading for February 17th, 2026 for the second reading.
Councillor Hanson?
Yes.
Okay.
February 17th.
Councillor Dale, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Nope. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson? Okay, so let's discuss the amendment. Is there any discussion of the amendment? Councillor Duquesne?
Are they all February 17th?
If we could.
Okay, just checking.
So we'll do this maybe on each one.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we are voting on the amendment. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Motion
Thank you.
passed.
And now we're back to the main motion. Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, no, I'm going to be supporting this. I think that there was certainly some significant problems with having it as an elected position. That said, I do understand concerns about who that person reports to and what that looks like. So far, I have not seen any instances where that is problematic, but I remind the community that per the charter, council does retain the authority to make that an appointed position directly to the council in the future if we so decide that that's a change that is needed. So there are lots of checks and balances and levers available to the council if this becomes problematic. So I would just kind of hold off and let's see how this continues to go.
And I would just add that this kind of work is the follow-on work behind the community making some very specific decisions through the election process about how they want their government to be structured. And so it can raise a lot of questions as we go through that integration process. But clearly, this community has said that they want a council manager form of government and they want an appointed recorder. And this, to me, makes sense in terms of integrating that into the system that the voters have indicated to us that they want. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa, on the main motion.
Dale?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Oh, yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Sorry. Now motion passed.
All right, we move on now to ordinance number 3283, amending and updating chapter 2.29, public art.
All right, I will go through kind of each section briefly, and then pause me if there are any extra questions. For this, well, and actually really for all the ordinances, we shout out to all our department heads and the rest of the city staff who went through the ordinance that they work closely with. So this is also taking a lot of feedback from Director Goldman, who works with the Public Arts Committee. So with that, the first addition is to update the definition. Since we made that update with 2.10, this advisory commission is a committee, and so is a correction to have consistent code. And that is a change then that I just did a word search and made consistent throughout the ordinance. Under 2.922020K, there's a small clarification on the definition of what is publicly owned property, and it matters for where public art can lie, and that includes right-of-ways. So that was a recommendation that made a lot of sense and was talked of also at our small group panel. Turning to section 100B. One of the feedbacks that, regarding the selection panel, one of the feedbacks Director Goldman had was that it can be actually difficult to find members to serve the panel. And so, so it was a recommendation to expand the group of who might be a qualified person to serve on the panel, to provide some more flexibility.
There's also a small change on that as to the noticing requirements, bringing it up to par with the other way we notice the meetings.
Yes, and then that's correct, thank you. And there will be a notice then on the city's website, and then the committee would also endeavor to solicit participation from property owners within 300 feet of the proposed site. Turning to section 1200. The recommendation was to clarify
to clarify and kind of expand situations of where public art can lie. Those three situations being on publicly owned property, on privately owned property where the city maintains the artwork, and then on privately owned property where the property owner maintains the public artwork. And then for public art on private property managed by the city, we would have an agreement specifying access, if the city needed to, like a easement, something like that, or really just an agreement would be fine. That then there would be conditions for maintenance or otherwise for the maintaining the condition of the art. So that was an expansion or a clarification for 1200. Uh, 140 is a grammar correction to have a gender neutral word, replacing he with they. Okay, and that's all I have.
I would just add one quick thing on that, Carmel, would be that it also expanded the public art on private property where the private property owner maintains it, where the city would not be responsible for maintenance, just approval, basically.
Right, thank you. And that was yeah, and the point of that is to let's have public art, but if the city might want to have flexibility in not maintaining it.
Are there any questions of staff? I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak with us on this topic?
No.
Okay, I close the public hearing. If there are no further questions of staff, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Duquesne?
I move to approve the first read. I don't do this often. I move to approve the first reading of the following ordinance, Ordinance 3283, an ordinance amending and updating Chapter 2.29 for public art.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councillor Duquesne, would you care to speak to your motion?
I would just like to thank Public Art and the Public Art Committee and all the work that they do and their work on reading this ordinance, because I definitely got feedback from them. So I would like to thank the Public Arts Committee.
Councillor Bloom?
No.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Dale?
Just a quick point of clarification. Sorry, Councillor Duquesne, do we need to add about February 17th on that? We're okay?
Oh.
Okay, good.
Okay. Great. And I would just add that I think this is a good indication of the flexibility that the city is approaching some of the traditional things that we've always done, to open it up, to make it a little bit more accessible to our community, and to find interesting ways to be able to produce and make sure we have public art without always being the one responsible for it. So I think this is an appropriate and good move forward. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, great. We move on now to ordinance number 3284, amending AMC 2.54.010 to align with procurement limits.
Yes, so this section of the code spells out how, if the city has surplus property, how to go about that. The current value for the disposal to go through the process is $10,000, which can occur pretty fast, especially when you're looking at certain types of property. And so the proposal here is to have the disposal of surplus property align with procurement. So the way to summarize it would be like in the same way that contracts come to the council for your dollar amount if it's over 250,000. Similarly, that would come to council aligning with those with that number. And similarly, if our procurement AMC ever updated, which I believe those references are cross-reference the ORS, then our surplus property AMC would similarly follow.
Questions? Okay, if there are no questions, a question? No. So I open the public hearing. We have one person signed up to speak to us on this issue. Clorinda Maripin, you'll have 3 minutes at the podium.
Hey, so in reading this, the first thing I thought was two things. One, by taking finance department out and making it just the city, you could make it a political process without any linkage to fiscal management. I think that's a terrible idea, and I think you need to keep the finance department in there someplace. Make it an additive process, so it's finance department and city, instead of just the city. You need some kind of fiscal tethering. The second piece, I think, is much something I don't know how you guys have considered. Need to state I'm not talking about the current government. I'm talking about this is a hole that opens up for some future person, because we have had fiscal mismanagement in this way before. Removing the upper limit, plus adding the addition of giving this to the general public as a buyer or transferee, opens a hole for corruption that I believe is needless and self-inflicted. Reading this the way you have it, because you're doing it in public, because it used to be, I think the way it was crafted was for nonprofits, other governments, and everything else, that was very specific in who you were giving to. You don't have people buying into this general public. But once you have the general public coming in, you have added a complete other arm that could reach into government and muck around with things. I kind of feel like this is already on rails and you guys are already doing this, but this was the first time I read it, and that raised up huge red flags for me. So there you go.
Thank you. Alyssa, has anyone else signed up to speak with us on this issue? No. I close the public hearing. Are there any further questions of staff? Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, so who is the decision maker on this? What is the specifics of who would be involved in the decision on disposal of surplus property?
So it depends on what it is. So typically it's the department head or the fleet manager making the recommendation, for example, for a vehicle to be surplus because it's exceeded its useful life. And then we follow the state procurement laws around how it is surplused. And then depending on its value threshold is, when it would come to council, or it would just be surplused through gov deals. And so it's an auction type thing where there's a minimum bid that's required based on its value. And then we look to get the maximum dollar return. And depending on what that is, it either goes back into the the enterprise that it came from, or in the case of vehicles, it goes back into the vehicle fund. So it goes back in the appropriate fund in which the kind of revenue is brought in.
And so it would always go through gov biz. It wouldn't be if it's going to go to an individual or the general public, it would also go through the same.
Goes through the same process.
Same process, no matter whether it's an individual, nonprofit, or some other government agency.
The only difference is if we recommend to council that we gift a large piece of equipment. For example, we've done that to our sister cities. And so we would bring that forward with a recommendation because that is a different process than we normally follow, and we would need council approval to kind of like move that forward. But in terms of how we surplus items, we follow the law, and yep.
Thank you.
And so just to clarify then, back, following on behind Councillor Kaplan's question, the procurement process is not necessarily changing because it is governed by state law. And instead, what it is who gets to sign off on it. So it used to be that everything would come to council if it was over $10,000. Now, if it's over $250,000 or whatever the signing limit is for the city manager, those are the bigger ticket items that would come to us. But everything else is governed by the procedures identified at the state level. So I think the question has been, could something simply be sold to a friend, for less than market value? And the answer seems to be that's not what the process looks like. Now, in that procurement process, typically, if they're moving through that process, the general public could bid on that, but our ordinance forbids it in its current form. Is that correct?
So I believe the general public can do that now. It's silent. It doesn't forbid it.
Right, but our current ordinance doesn't identify the general public, and that's why we've added that in.
Correct. So it made it clear that they were included.
So this actually gives us more potential bidders on that surplus property. Yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying for me. Any other questions of staff? Councilor Dale.
And just real quick to close the loop on all of this, everything that is happening here that we've discussed by default runs through the finance department as far as line items on the budget. And for anybody who's really interested, all of these contracts, procurements are all public record. I look through them all the time. You can find them easily on our public records in our archives, correct?
Yes, find some stuff to bid on GovDeals. We'd love to sell you.
But also the things that we have done so that you can kind of correlate what we've done to the budget. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any further questions? The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Hanson?
Thank you. I move to approve first reading of 3284, an ordinance amending AMC 2.54.010 to align with procedure limits, and schedule the second reading during the February 17th, 2026 council meeting.
Is there a second? Councilor Kaplan? Okay. Councilor Hanson? Councilor Kaplan? Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Next on our list is ordinance number 3285, amending AMC 2.62.030 to provide for a chain of command in the event of an emergency.
As the title suggests, where the city's trying to think forward of an emergency, so some worst case scenarios, and if the city manager were to be incapacitated or absent, the suggestion is to have a chain of command so that the city can get organized for an emergency if that were hopefully to never happen.
Are there questions of staff? Okay, I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this ordinance?
No.
I close the public hearing. Is there any further questions of staff? Or are there? Floor is open for a motion. Councilor Sherrill.
Thanks, Mayor. I move to approve the first reading of 3285, an ordinance amending AMC 2.62.030 to approve for a chain of command in the event of an emergency, and schedule the second reading during the February 17th meeting.
Second.
Councilor Sherrill? Councilor Bloom? No. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Next on the list is ordinance number 3286, amending 9.08.120 to prevent property owners from keeping hazardous or infested trees.
This one, we took some feedback also from our fire department that no owner in charge of property should and then it added, shall allow to stand a dead or decaying tree that's a hazard. And then it adds the second part of that clause, or that harbors insects or diseases that constitute a potential threat to other trees within the city. And I believe this one also, the fire department, Shay, his title's escaping me right now, but I believe it's also, he double checked some of the fire code for that, and so that language is also taken from some of the fire code. And that was actually a good piece of input that I circled back to connect with the fire department following our small group study. So that's the follow-up from that one.
Great. Questions of staff? Okay, I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak with us on this issue?
No, ma'am.
I close the public hearing. If there are no further questions, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, I move to approve first reading of ordinance 3286, an ordinance amending 9.08.120 to prevent property owners from keeping hazardous or infested trees, and schedule second reading at the February 17th council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Bloom?
Nope.
Councilor Duquesne?
No.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa. Is there?
Dale?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Next up is ordinance number 3287, amending and updating chapter 14.12, electric system regulations.
All right. The overview for the electric, for the overview for chapter 14 updates has to, it really aligns with updating, it aligns with the updates that the electric department has to abide by with regard to their electric service requirement manual. The way it works in the electric department is it's almost like the ORS equivalent, where it's like that's kind of the manual that really guides how electric or how cities should manage their electric. And so so a lot of the references are really to refer people to go to that manual, similar in a way that the council's been gotten used to the ORS reference. So with that, kind of go through. So 030. Okay, so 030 does exactly that. There's a lot of scratch out, and that's because the reference is for the electric service manual, which is quite specific if you were to ever go there. It's, and similarly, looking at 09, moving on to 090. Here, this one is not related, a comment not related to the electric requirement manual, but regarding trees, that the city will trim trees on private property, and then it deletes the language that in the event such permission is refused, the property owner refusing permission shall be liable for all damages and costs that may result from. So those are the two, and then 092 is similarly another reference to the ESR manual. And all of those updates were on the recommendation of our electric director to be in line with current standards.
And Carmel, I would add just to that the trimming of the trees, we're required to do that by the Public Utilities Commission. So trees that extend into the right of way, it's a liability on the city if they catch fire or, something happens with the electric. So we're basically conforming to say, like, we're going to do this because we're required to.
So, Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Carmel, I'm sorry I didn't catch this earlier, but it just occurs to me that we have pricing for temporary drops and for meter testing, and I'm wondering if we can refer to the chart where those fees live so they can be updated in real time and just have the reference here in our 3287 that's in the very, very beginning.
Oh, yeah. Are they,
Yeah, construction temporary fee, $75 for single phase and $150 for 3-phase. And those may be, current prices, but.
I think we can confirm that those are in the miscellaneous fee book, and if they are, then absolutely.
Yeah, let's try to put all fees in, linked to where they live.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions of staff? Councilor Duquesne?
Carmel, thanks so much for this, but out of all of the ordinances, and I kind of grabbed Johan for a minute there, I am not an electrician, and it does say that I can refer to the ESR manual, but still, I am not an electrician. So, and it says customers, and it has fees in there, and it talks about, and you talked about regulations. How does this apply to that customer, to that person who is a homeowner, and we are talking about updating the ERS manual? How do these regulations apply to that homeowner? I know when I was reading this ordinance, and it did talk about temporary lines, permanent lines, meter locations, things like that. How does this affect that average everyday homeowner?
well, I mean, they would all be things that the homeowner would be required to abide by anyway. And so I think that having it be updated really probably helps the electric department communicate a little bit better, and also, I guess, communicate accurately with their own code of what the requirements are. And so, like, for example, I think like someone in the electric department could be like, hey, in the same way that if someone has to go to community development, if they're trying to build a home, or, a developer is like, hey, I gotta hook up electric, the coordination would be between, I guess, proper reference to, did I feel like maybe
this refers to that new structure, not somebody who's already in a home. Am I understanding that correctly? Although it does refer to if something is built after 1975.
Councilor Hanson?
Yeah, Councilor Duquesne, I am a licensed electrician, kind of, just solar. But if you were a homeowner who was building from scratch, this would really pertain to you developing your project all the way through. But it's more so for anybody that's developing those projects. Most likely, right? Most likely a contractor, but we all abide by the same laws, so it's all got to be in here, so we can do it ourselves too.
So it's new structures. It's not
or remodels.
Or remodels.
Right.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be.
Yeah, I was trying to think of scenarios where there would be some or I guess in theory, if someone had to change their electric, maybe they'd have to have the new box at the specific space. But that's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councilor Sherrill?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Maybe not a question, but can I speak to this with real life experience with our electric department in today's market?
You can in a moment.
Okay.
I need to open up the public hearing first. If there are no further questions of staff, I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this issue?
No.
Okay, I close the public hearing. We're open now for deliberate, or let's let's continue to have a little bit of discussion. So Councillor Sherrill?
Yeah, just some first world experience on this. It does have a major impact on what we call infill housing. As we infill properties that we already have with current infrastructure, we are having to upgrade a lot of services. And we're lucky to have an on-the-ground electric department that can show up and walk people through this process. And I would say that the electrical manual is pretty clear and objective, and this is a good thing. I would also add that there is costs. You know, when we upgrade to the current standard, or we upgrade meters, or we have to go underground, it is going to affect cost of housing. And we're a community that talks. We spend a lot of time and energy trying to keep housing affordable, and then we continue to pass industry standard policies that do add cost to housing, and this is one of them. And it's just kind of a double-edged sword. So that's something I just wanted to mention. And I'm thinking that over as I decide whether I can support this.
Councillor Dale?
Mayor, if I may address Councillor Sherrill, I just wanted clarification on it. So, because this would be something I'm interested in, would you say, Councillor Sherrill, that that being that the case, would this be something that you would recommend, hopefully, that council or would take up with the electric department relative to the manual? That this ordinance is kind of separate from that. That we get the ordinance done, but then we have additional discussions, or we work with Tom McBartlett on the manual itself at another time?
Yeah, I think that, that's a good idea. I guess my main point is referring to the electrical service manual. It does have the tie-breaking power in the field, so having an ordinance that points to that, I think is a good thing.
Great. If there are no further questions, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Hansen?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve first reading of ordinance 3287, an ordinance amending and updating chapter 14.12 electrical system regulations, and schedule second reading during February 17th city council meeting.
Councillor, did you want to make any adjustments for the miscellaneous fees?
Yes, Johan, how should we do that?
So you could make the motion to amend if these fees are listed in the miscellaneous fees book.
To the miscellaneous fees handbook.
Yeah, to just reference that.
Okay. May I redo?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to go back to the beginning. I move to approve first reading of 3287, an ordinance amending and updating chapter 14.12 electrical system regulations as amended for fees referring to the miscellaneous fees book, and schedule second reading during the February 17th city council meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councillor Hansen?
Yes, the electrical requirements are very objective and cut and dry. However, out in the field, a lot of real world accommodations are made, and we have a great electrical department. I think, keeping the fees out of there will keep it cleaner and more evergreen. But we have an amazing team in the electrical department that really walks us through our options as homeowners and builders, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, agreed. And I also appreciate the real experience that we have here on council. It helps provide good insight, and yeah, I'm thankful you were allowed to be appointed. It's good context. Thank you.
So any further discussion? Councillor Dale?
Yep, just real quick, and I just want to point taken to Councillor Sherrill. I really appreciate you pointing that out. Just at a high level, I really appreciate also legal department going through, because ordinances are about getting rid of the how out of these, which we've kind of traditionally done. Ordinances are about the what, so that we can use manuals, policies, resolutions to move more quickly to do the more common sense things for things like affordable housing. So thanks for bringing that up as a tool and a reminder to council and staff to move forward on that. Well done. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hansen,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. We do have a timing issue in that all of our first readings have to be started before 8 o'clock. And so what I would like to do, a couple of these, we do have people who've come out this evening to speak with us. So what I'd like to do is switch the order so that we can accommodate as many of these as have people here to speak as we can. So I'll draw councilors' attention. We'll start with the last one on the list for this section, ordinance number 3294, amending 9.16.070 to distinguish between daytime versus nighttime dog noise.
So this one's actually a little bit different. It came to council by public comment. We referred to it and agreed with the two people who spoke to this issue that it was much more clear and made sense to include dog barking in that.
Yep, that's right. And then the fine is different, more severe for nighttime dogs.
Great. Any questions of staff? I open the public hearing. We have one person who has signed up to speak with us at public hearing for this issue, Susan Peck. Susan, you'll have 3 minutes at the microphone. Please tell us your name and the city in which you reside to begin. And it will work the same as it did for public forum.
Thank you very much. My name is Susan Peck. I live here in the city. Good evening, everyone. My comments are in reference to the two ordinance amendments you all have laid out around nuisances and unnecessary noise, 3294. So regarding 9.16070, Part A8, the amended language would still allow for barking between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. That would disturb neighbors. Regarding 9.16070, Part B, does the presence of a cat or wildlife not make such barking in residential areas a violation? Still would be a violation between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., as I understand it. It appears these two code amendments would still allow for barking in a quiet residential area between 10 p.m. 7 a.m. Even a dog that is howling and barking for less than 10 minutes would still awaken residents between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Please amend the codes to make any barking between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. a violation. Otherwise, dog owners will continue to let their pets out at any time of the night to potentially disturb the quiet of the neighborhood. Thank you for considering this.
Alyssa, has anyone else signed up to speak with us this evening?
No.
I close the public hearing. Are there any further questions of staff? So I just have one. So is there a reason why we don't have the amount of time in the evening section that's been added?
Well, it reads, so it's unlawful for a dog to excessively whine, bark, howl, emit any similar noise in a residential area between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Right.
So-
but in the one above, when we're talking about 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., it talks about actual times. Is it useful to put more specific limits on what makes excessive barking? I would tend to agree that any barking at 2 o'clock in the morning is excessive barking.
Right, and that's how it reads right now. How it reads?
That makes disturbing noises, let me see, go back to excessively whine, right?
Any amount of time would, if it were, if
So
you were getting it as like a response to a reasonable person's sensitivities, any amount of time that is unreasonable. So if it's 2 a.m. and you get a big gnarly bark happen.
So one bark would, a resident could call in if a dog kind of routinely in the middle of the night just randomly barks and wakes them up.
Yeah.
So we don't have to, so that's how we've handled this, is by not having those limitations.
In the evening.
In the evening?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Dale?
I'll take it. I move to approve first reading of 3294, an ordinance amending 9.16.070 to distinguish between daytime versus nighttime dog noise, and schedule second reading during the February 17, 2026 council meeting.
Second.
Counselor Dale?
Nope.
Counselor Bloom?
Nope.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and work on, get started with ordinance number 3292, amending Chapter 6 to reflect marijuana retail regulations.
And sorry, if I may interrupt, the other kind of, there's another ordinance that sort of dovetailed. So I recommend actually having a motion on that one. There was animals and birds was in a different section, and so I just took I took dogs out of that one and put it into I referred it to the ordinance we just passed for first read.
Which one is it?
3293.
Yeah, 3293.
Go ahead.
Well, it does that. And when I was doing some cross references, discovered that unreasonable noise is also in a entirely separate section. And so to have consistent code, I tried to just put it in one spot.
Are there questions of staff? Oh, and we need to read the title.
Yeah, so this is ordinance 3293, an ordinance amending 9.08.170D2 to refer to 9.16070 for dog nuisance matters.
Okay. Are there any questions? I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak with us?
No.
I close the public hearing. If there are no further questions, the floor is open for a motion. Counselor Dale?
Thank you. I move to approve first reading of 3293, an ordinance amending 9.08.170.d.2 to refer to 9.16.070 for dog nuisance matters and schedule second reading for February 17, 2026 council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Dale?
No, thank you.
Counselor Duquesne?
Nothing.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
So we are now to 8 o'clock, which means that the remainder of our first reading elements need to be postponed to the next business meeting. Thank you, Carmel, and our legal team. And thank you to the working group who has been working to make this process go more smoothly and have those discussions ahead of time. We will now move on to the city manager report.
All right. So we can start with the look ahead, which is in your packet. So we do not have a study session coming up as we have a holiday on the 16th. So our next study session will be March 2nd, where we have invited the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to come and talk about the deer population in Ashland. And we also have an update coming from the Amigo Club per their request. So looking forward to that. And then in terms of our next council meeting, you will see a lot of ordinances coming back for both first and second readings, since this is what we do now. So there'll be more of that, as well as the resolution for electric rates. So if you remember, you gave staff direction to bring that forward on the December 17th meeting, and we are prepared to do that. So those are things of note for the next meeting. We'll also have an update from Aura about how shelter is going. So I'll get with Dan Cano and his team on that. And then in terms of the city manager report, we had the town hall, which went well, and it was nice to give awards to our volunteers, Debbie Nicewander and Dennis Slattery. So that went well. We have openings on our committees, so anyone who is interested in serving, please check out our website. You mentioned the If I Were Mayor contest. One thing of note, effective yesterday, on the 1st, the city no longer has a combined fire and rescue ground membership with Mercy Fights. They are now separated. So we will continue to work collaboratively. So if you have an ambulance membership, that is something you may want to speak to the fire department about, those changes. And then we had our Christmas tree recycling program, which is a collaboration between Boy Scout Troop 112 and the Parks and Rec Department. And they did a wonderful job with recycling all those trees, and all that chipping will be used on our local trails for maintenance, which is great. Pioneer Hall is open for reservations. We are finishing some things up with the community center and hope to open that soon. That's all I got.
Fantastic. It was great to be in Pioneer Hall for our workshop the other day. That was fantastic to be back in the building. There were questions, Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to highlight that we have our joint APRC meeting on Wednesday, and that is in the council chambers.
So APRC will be hosting that, so we'll be their guests during their meeting. Councillor Kaplan.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Sabrina, I had a question as well. Somebody asked me if they're about that same meeting, joint meeting. I know it's hosted by the Parks Commission. The question to me that I didn't have an answer to was, would there be public forum at that meeting?
Actually, don't know the answer to that. I will need to.
The agenda's already out.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know if APRC does public. Yes, they do. They do? Then yeah, I would assume so.
During their study sessions?
Well, is this a study session? Because if it's a study session, no.
Correct.
I didn't think that was up yet. I'm not sure the agenda's up yet.
I thought I saw it there.
Okay. Hold on.
I saw East Main Park on there.
Well, they have a meeting tomorrow. Ours isn't until next week. So I don't think the agenda's out. It should be out by the end of this week. So if it's a study session, no. If it's a business meeting, yes.
So what is it?
It's a study session.
And so just so people are clear on the date of that joint session. Wednesday, the date? February 11th. Thank you. Right, because I think it's not always clear. It's not always clear when it's joint sessions. They have a meeting tomorrow night, and I just wanted to make sure that people understood that it wasn't the tomorrow evening meeting. Okay, great. Are there any other questions about that? No.
So I have it looks like they're going to have public forum after our joint meeting. So our meeting is not a business meeting, but they have a regular meeting after our joint session. So there will be public forum, but it will be later in the meeting.
So they'll pause, they'll close out this study session, open up the general business meeting, and have public forum then. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Other business from council members and reports from council liaisons. I know Councillor Bloom and I have been discussing what we'd like to bring forward first. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Councillor Bloom.
Sure. Yeah, so I think that Ashland.news has reported on this, dropped that this morning, but last night there was a board meeting for SOU. They are facing some serious financial difficulties right now. So I'd refer you to the Ashland.news article so that you can kind of catch up on that. But essentially what Mayor Graham and I were discussing is the possibility of council kind of coming together and unanimously putting forth a letter of support for SOU so that they could get some state funds to kind of be able to pull themselves out of this, continue with the planning that they've been doing. And I, just some brief research for context, why this is important. This isn't about a university necessarily. This is about our entire community. This is about the city of Ashland as one of the biggest economic pillars of our community. Eco Northwest did a study, $282.5 million in annual output in Jackson County per year. SU is also responsible for a total of 2,146 direct, indirect, and induced jobs in Jackson County. University spending also influences sectors like housing, real estate, services, retail, hospitality. Students and employees spend locally. Research on communities experiencing school campus closures suggests that population declines, reduced income levels can follow, particularly in towns where the institution is a central economic anchor, which SOU is. It also has impacts on the city's function as well, with lost revenue from utilities, food and beverage tax revenue, and transient lodging tax revenue. This is akin to if a major plant closes or mine, major employers in rural communities. We need to take this seriously, and I really ask for council to come together unanimously for us to send this letter and do everything we can to work with SOU to make sure that the state prioritizes this institution, because if it goes, the city can follow.
So the process would be, typically the council would have a letter in front of them in order to make a decision, but time is of the essence with this issue, and typically I would send a letter just on the behalf of the mayor's office if we didn't have an opportunity to speak to the whole council. So what we would be asking, I think, just to be clear, is that Councilor Bloom and I would draft the letter. I would send it on behalf of the full council, as opposed to simply on behalf of the mayor's office. So we don't have this as a formal agenda item, but Johan, do we need to do that, or is direction adequate?
You could provide direction, I believe. Yeah, it's fine.
All right, so what we would be looking for is direction from this council to draft that letter and send it over to SOU and to our state legislators.
You have my full support, Mayor. Thank you. And Council Bloom, very much appreciated.
Yep.
Have mine too.
Yes.
Councilor,
Absolutely, 100.
and Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, you bet. I wonder if a consolidation or some sort of creative higher ed solution is going to be coming out of this, and whatever it looks like, I just hope that Ashland can stay on top with keeping this incredible, valuable resource in our community. But as you craft the letter, I just wonder just exactly what the Brain Trust is going to come to the SOU community with, and I just would keep it broad and its perspective. Like, we're not necessarily going to keep the SOU that we have right now. It's going to be different.
Absolutely, and I think what I would suggest is that what they're telling us that they need time. Right? But to Councilor Bloom's point, they need some time to figure out what the future SOU looks like. And if they don't get an infusion of some cash from the legislature, they simply won't have that time. One of the things that I've seen from SOU is just a very strong willingness to really look at all of the possibilities and what does education look like in the future, and how do we build that here. And I think it's also important to just remember that we are the southern anchor of that system. And so just regionally, what happens to our students if they don't have a local place that they can deliver them a high quality education like SOU can. Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, and if I may, I think some important context to understand is that this is an ongoing trend with the state of Oregon deprioritizing and cutting funding for our higher education institutions. To put it into perspective, the state of Idaho per capita spends more on higher education than the state of Oregon. That should be embarrassing for us as a state. Furthermore, I think it's important to understand the context. Yes, there needs to be changes in how we look at higher education, but it's important to understand that there are a lot of mandates and regulations and expectations that the state places on universities, that they have to have certain kind of programming, which ties the hands of these small universities to be more flexible and nimble. And so, yes, I think that needs to happen. Really, this is about let's buy some time for SOU, but I certainly encourage everybody out there to write, call, email your state legislators and demand that we start supporting higher education better, because the Higher Education Coordinating Commission has come out and said that by 2030, the other regional universities are going to follow. And so I've also asked the city manager to reach out to Monmouth, where Western Oregon University is, and to La Grande, where Eastern Oregon University is, to see if their councils would also join in support writing a letter, because we might be the first, but we're certainly not going to be the last. And if we can come together, these small communities, I think we can do something really, really major and impactful.
And I intend to reach out to their mayors. Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, I'd like to echo much of what Councillor Bloom said, and also point out that we were recently given an opportunity to comment on the governor's economic development roadmap for our region. And I think it's 3 of the 8 planks, I don't have the number exactly, refer to education and higher education as important. So it's hard to imagine that that roadmap could be effective without the strong presence of a strong Southern Oregon University.
Any further discussion? Okay, Councillor Duquesne.
I know that tomorrow I got the email from the chamber because our state representatives are in Salem now looking at a very short season of legislative opportunities. So tomorrow at 7:30, I'll be listening to see where the money's going. Tomorrow morning, it's all about the budget, who gets what. So I'll be more than happy to email a report back what that status is, because higher education is very important. And I have to give my hats off to President Bailey and all of his work and efforts, because he's in Salem right now working away for our students and for Ashland. So yeah, fingers crossed, and I'll get back to us.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm the council liaison to the Jackson County Continuum of Care, and I just want to remind everybody that Sabrina sent out to us a community feedback form last Monday the 26th, by email. It's a brief survey questionnaire, I think it's 5 or 6 questions, asking elected officials and business owners, well, in this case, elected officials, responses on a series of questions to help to guide some planning and strategic communications for the continuum of care. So if you haven't had a chance to fill that out yet, I'd appreciate if you would send it back to Melissa Marcos, is the point of contact identified in Sabrina's email. Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of go back to the legislative session that our legislators are heading into. I've spoken with both of them recently, and this is a very difficult short session for them. And they are facing some extreme cost-cutting requirements in large part because of the way that the federal government is behaving, and the elements that they are abandoning our citizenry on are landing at the feet of the state government, and they are landing at the feet of local governments. And we're just seeing the pinch absolutely everywhere. The things that we need to be investing in, we simply can't without a functioning federal government that is co-investing with us at the state and the local level. One of the things that I've done recently, just over the weekend with OSF, is they are having a similar conversation at the state legislature, because there are with cuts to many of the programs across the board, some of the funding that they have been awarded is in question about whether it's going to have to be reduced. And so I did send also a letter on behalf of the mayor's office, because I didn't have time to get in front of the council with that. But just so you know that we're actively engaged in that space as well, to make sure that the funding that they are counting on from the state stays intact as much as possible. But all of our legislators are really facing incredibly difficult decisions here. And to that point, both of these elements are economic drivers that have massive ripple impacts to our community and to all of Southern Oregon. So I appreciate that the council is on this task. And again, I think it points back to the liaison processes that we have, and each of us knowing who our assignments are and who we're supposed to be paying attention to and bringing things back to the council for. So I appreciate Councillor Bloom doing some of that legwork on the SOU element as well. Any other report backs from council liaisons? Councillor Duquesne, did you have something? Okay. Great. Well, so that brings us to the end of our evening. The floor is open for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.